All right, let's finish the first presentation, and after that we are going to review a number of management concepts or theories or management ideas that scholars and also management practitioners have developed. So in the previous presentation, we discussed about the management skills and the introductory section of management. Okay, so now this one here is actually about the performance. Okay, there are two things in terms of performance as Peter Drucker suggests. Okay, Peter Drucker is one of the management gurus. He suggested we need to differentiate the concept of effectiveness and efficiency, where the effectiveness is actually about the ability to choose the appropriate goals and achieve them. And the efficiency is actually about the ability to make the best use of the available resources when we want to achieve the goal. So in other words, when it comes to efficiency, efficiency considers the resources that we spend to achieve the goal, okay? Whilst effectiveness is actually about making a decision about the goal and achieve the goal, okay? Regardless of the resources that we spend. Whilst efficiency discusses about the resources, okay? Right, so a brief summary. Management is a process that organizations perform, in order to achieve the goals. Okay, so management has goals that we need to achieve, and in the process of achieving the goal, the organizations perform 4 management functions: the planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. Or some other people suggest planning, organizing, actuating, and controlling. Okay, right. So that will conclude our discussion in presentation 1. And the next thing that we need to discuss is actually about the second presentation, which is basically about the theoretical framework or theoretical concepts, if you like, that revolve around management, and we try to look at the evolution a little bit. Okay, so that's the goal of the second presentation: key management theories, concepts, or ideas that people have developed since the ancient periods until now. Okay, and right now let's recap the ancient periods. Okay, and there are a couple of thoughts that I'd like to discuss in this instance. The first one is Plato, who authored the Republic. He suggested that at a time, the voice of the customer, specialization, promotion of the organizational culture, the universal training, and emphasizing shared goals are critical. So that inspires us about the management. Okay, so we have been given some ideas about the management actually from Plato. Okay, and still in the ancient periods, from the East perspective, representing the Eastern in a simple way, we have representing the Eastern thought in a simple way. We have the art of war. In this instance, Sun Tzu, or some other people say it's Sun Tzu, depending on how you pronounce it pronounce the Mandarin. Okay, so Sun Tzu is a popular military strategist, okay, in the ancient period of China, and he suggested what he called as the art of war, or Sun Tzu Ping Fa in Mandarin. Okay, and one of the things that he suggests is basically about know your enemy, know yourself, and your victory will not be threatened. And he also suggests further, know your terrain, know the weather, and your victory will be complete. Okay. So these two lines basically suggest the importance of planning, and the if we look at today's management concepts, we actually look at business planning, for instance, that starts with understanding the external situation and also the internal situation. Okay, the external situation reflects the macro environmental forces and micro environmental forces, right? Like your competitors, for instance. Okay, the macro environmental forces includes your political, economic, social, cultural, and technological forces. Okay, and the internal elements includes knowing ourselves, our strengths and weaknesses. Okay, so that is actually helping us in formulating our strategies in today's business landscape. Okay, and actually Sun Tzu also suggests his thoughts in military actually has been translated into management concepts, and experts suggest that he also suggests the key elements to win a war. Okay, in quote unquote, and he himself influenced by the Taoism principle do not suggest war if it is not necessary. So um, so um, the other thing that he also suggests is the leadership and moral principles in guiding the values of the organization. Okay, right. So that's the ancient periods. That here we say that we actually build on the knowledge from one thing. Okay, some scholars also thinkers, right, in their periods, okay, including the ancient periods, okay, gave contribution to management thinking, and today's management practitioners and also management scholars keep developing that. Okay. Right now, the next one is the starting to enter the modern period, where we have Frederick Taylor, who suggests the concept of scientific management. Okay, he observed the efficiency in running the manufacturing organizations. Okay, where he suggests that we need to optimize and simplify the jobs, and he also suggests we need to share the good practices. Okay, so that the idea is still relevant in today's business landscape. Okay, where we try to look at the good management practices. Okay, each each business functions, for instance, have their own practices. This is where we learn about it. Okay, if you work in the multinational companies, for instance, you may be involved in the regional meeting where you share your own practice, and for the entire region to share the learning together. Okay, so there are a few principles that he suggests in a nutshell. Um, so he suggests to replace the rule of thumb or kind of instinct to make a decisions, to be replaced by the scientific method. So more into scientific method. Now, if you look at that, in today business landscape, we have already said that we need to consider the data-driven decision making, data-driven business strategies, for instance, where we substantiate our arguments when we write our plan. Okay. And the other principle that is also relevant, still relevant to our business landscape, is matching the jobs with the skills of the owners of the job holders, right? So it's not just assigning people to certain or random tasks, okay? But we also need to look at whether these people have got the skills to deliver the job or not, okay? and monitor the performance, which is one of the time and motion focus of the study that Taylor performed at the time, and allocate the role of managers and workers. So he also suggests to differentiate the roles of managers, where managers can focus on planning because the workers do the work. Okay, in this instance, both workers and managers can still, since they can focus on their tasks, they can be more efficient. Okay, right. So that's the main ideas of Taylor. Okay, now let's move on. Well, our management concept has also benefited from the what we call as the management by objectives. Okay, this is actually about a process where specific goals are set collaboratively for the whole organization and for every unit and individual member in it. Okay, so the MBO actually helps us to plan and manage the organizational activities and assess and reward contributions, because it clarifies what we want to achieve, because we have a clear objective, okay, a specific objective. And of course, in the when we write the objective, we need to consider using a specific a certain principle, like the SMART principle, where we need to be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timed. Okay, right. So that's the management objectives, management by objectives, or MBO, where we have a specific goal. We discuss about the specific goal that the organization needs to achieve. Okay, you can also refer to your own organization in terms of how the objectives are developed. Is that because of from the top management cascaded down, or what sort of consultation process that the organization conducts to form certain objectives for the organization? Okay. All right. Now, the management by objectives actually also receives some criticisms. Aside from praises, it also receives criticisms. Praises, of course, in terms of clarity. Okay. Now, it also supports the idea that if we can develop specific objectives, it's hard for us to manage it. If we can't manage it, that's not management. That is feeling or instincts or intuition. Okay. So we have to have a specific objectives as the spirit of management that we discussed in the previous presentation. Okay, and the next thing that people also develop is if we refer to the objectives again, we may have some conflicts when it comes to formulating the objectives or objective setting. All right, and when we implement the objectives, we may also invite some conflicts as well among ourselves. Okay, think about let's say a manufacturing organization. Okay, you can think about certain departments such as marketing, manufacturing, finance, sales, R&D, quality, and so on and so forth, HR, procurement, and so on and so forth. Okay, there may be some conflicts in there when they develop the objectives, because the objectives will drive will set the agenda for the business functions to achieve. Okay, and when after they agree with the objectives, they may also have certain conflicts as well in terms of how they will implement it. Okay, the implementation by each individual department may have different interests. Okay, when it comes to the implementation. Okay, so you can think about the interests of each department. Okay, the manufacturing team may want to focus more on the efficiency. Okay, whilst the marketing department may want to focus more on the driving the business growth with launching new product, for instance. Okay, that these two, although they aim at achieving sales and profits, as a total company's objectives, but these two may be implemented in the may drive the conflict for these two departments. Okay, therefore, Kaplan and Norton actually suggest what they call as the balanced scorecard, where everybody looks at the same scorecard, okay, or dashboard or strategy map, if you like, which is the outcome of the balanced scorecard. Okay. With that, they suggest that we need to battle the siloness of the organization. Okay, so the individual department must look into what needs to be achieved as an organization, and then from there they work back in terms of what each individual department needs to perform. Okay, right. So there are four things that they suggest specifically. Okay, the first one is the financial stewardship, which is basically about the financial performance, okay, or effective resource use that leads to the profitability and revenue and profitability. The second one is the customer stakeholder. So with that, actually, they link the ultimate goal of the company, which is basically revolving around the financial performance, is linked back to the customer and the stakeholder. Okay, what we need to do for the customers, right, to gain support for the customers. In this instance, that revolves around the customer value, the satisfaction, and also the retention of the customers. Okay, so what do we need to do to ensure that is achieved? Okay, and to get there, we can't just getting one department to make it happen, because that goes back to the internal process. Okay, what efficiency and quality process that we need to perform, okay, to deliver that for our customers. Okay, so we can also look at the marketing department, for instance, what they need to do internally, the operation department, the manufacturing department, also discuss what they need to do to achieve the efficiency, to deliver the quality that we promise as an organization for to the customers. Okay, and that will not happen just in a night, as people suggest that it takes years to build the Great Wall. We also need to build the learning and growth, or LNG, which is basically about the organizational capacity that supports how the internal process needs to be performed. Okay, needs to be built through investing in human capital, okay, infrastructure and technology, and also the culture of the organization. All right. All right, so that's balanced scorecard in a nutshell, okay? And people expand that idea into a more specific measures and initiatives, okay? So here we talk about the financial, customer, internal process, and LNG, okay? From the financial perspective, for instance, what is the goal of the organization? You talk about sales goal, the profit goal, for instance, how you measure it. Okay, then here you talk about specific numbers, let's say to increase by 10%. Okay, and what initiatives that you need to perform in here. Okay, and the next one is the customers. Okay, either customer retention or customer acquisition. Okay, and how you measure it. Okay, and what the initiatives are to get there. Okay, and the next one is the internal process. Then this is where you detail what each individual department needs to do, all right, to ensure that we achieve that, right? And the last one is the LNG. What kind of learning and growth plan that we place, that we put in place? Okay. All right. And just briefly again about the balanced scorecard. It is actually about how do customers view us, for instance, which is linked to the revenue of the organization, and how do we create value that is actually related to the strategic objectives that ensure the future competitiveness, innovation, and organizational learning. And the third aspect is actually about the core competencies that we need. Okay, what do we need? Right? What core competencies that we need to develop to achieve that? To deliver that. Okay, this is actually the internal question what we must build. Okay, and the last one is how do shareholders view us, which is basically about the financial performance. Okay, so there are the aspects of the critical questions that the balance scorecard asks us to think about. Okay. Right. Again, the balance scorecard actually help us to break the siloedness of the organization. Okay, so we look at the organization as an organization where we review everything together as a business function. Okay, as the entire organization. Okay. Okay, so the next one is this is a new management concept that people have developed. Okay, the triple bottom line, where some other people also suggest it is about the three P's objectives. Okay, the profit, people, planet. Okay, profit is actually about the financial goal, the ultimate financial goal that the organization wants to achieve. Okay, people includes the customers and also the employees. Okay, and planet is actually about the environment. Okay, um, in in other words, the triple bottom line is actually about the sustainable business practices. Okay, sustainable in here in the sense that we can sustain the business because we are making profit, and we get support from the stakeholders like our customers and also our employees, and therefore we need to be ethical in running the business, and we also need to look at the environment as well, okay, to ensure that it is sustainable, okay. um, and um, and in saying that, it is considered as the balance of the three key stakeholders, right? The company's interests, okay, people's interests, which is basically about the interests of the employees, the customers, and society at large, and also the interest of the environment, okay. Now, we can also contrast this with the double bottom line, which is basically more into the profits, the company's interest, and the social interest, basically. Okay, and recently, management scholars, also offer what they call as the quadruple bottom line. Okay, so they develop four P's objectives. Okay, the profit, people, planet, and purpose of the organization that should be embedded in whatever the organizations do. Okay, right. So that's the triple bottom line. Now, the other one that I'd like to discuss is the risk management. Okay, which is another concept that has gained strong momentum in today's business landscape. Okay, the risk management itself actually has been considered as part of the strategic contribution to the organization. Okay, now let's step back a little bit. Okay, what is risk? Okay, well, risk is, well, common sense, a potential problem. If you look at the Macquarie Dictionary, for instance, possibility of loss or injury. Now, it was defined by the Australian Standard, New Zealand Standards back in 1999 as the exposure of an activity to an uncertain outcome. Okay, now in that one was developed by the Australia Standard, New Zealand Standard when it comes to risk management. Okay, and then the ISO, this is an international organization, reviews a number of risk management concepts, and they mentioned that the one that the Australia Standard, New Zealand Standard is very close to what they think as an ideal concept, including the approach, the model, the framework, and so on and so forth. So they actually adopt that. They evolve that to the next level, and the Australia Standard, New Zealand Standard also finally adopts the one that is offered by the ISO. Okay, so risk is actually defined as the effect of uncertainty on objectives. Okay, so that is the final decision that they offered based on the standards. Okay, ISO 31000:2009. Okay, now the framework actually involves the establish the context, identify the risk, analyze and evaluate risks, treat the risk. Okay, and along the way we have the communication, consultation with the stakeholders, right? And in our attempt to manage the risk, we also monitor and review the risks, okay, along the way of our time, okay. Now, that actually has helped us to keep improving our business strategies, okay. Therefore, the organizations need to consider risk management when it comes to writing their own or formulating their own business strategies, okay. In the business plan, we need to consider where we can include the risk management aspects, okay. So therefore, risk management has become more and more strategic in today's business landscape, okay, because it helps us to identifying the potential issues out there. Therefore, it opens the opportunities for us to develop the specific strategic insights to address that before it happens, okay. And well, the other reason why risk management, aside from the concept itself as a practical tool for business practitioners to help fostering their own or developing their own business strategies, risk management also gained momentum because of the recent global financial crisis that actually have instigated all management practitioners to think about the world out there is uncertain, okay. What we have planned, right, in our management strategies may need to consider some changes that that may happen out there, okay, and that affects the achievement of the objectives. Remember, management has the objectives, right? When it comes to a management concepts, okay, we need to consider what objectives that we want to achieve, okay. Therefore, the risk management in here is actually a good, a perfect way for us to keep improving ourselves, improving our business strategies, okay. As a result, it has gained stronger momentum, okay, especially after we experienced the global financial crisis. That is actually an alarm for everybody. Hey, hang on a second. We need to ensure that we have something in our plan to anticipate that kind of uncertainty. Okay. All right. Well, I'm not going to talk a lot about the sources of risk. Okay, but we have a few things in here, like the external sources. Okay, that includes the political, economic, social, cultural, technological aspects. Okay, for instance, conflicting contractors' priorities or conflicting stakeholders' priorities. Okay, partnering relationship. Okay, the increased global competition. Okay, so that is basically one of the aspects of the or one of the flavor in today's management. Okay, the digitization of the business, digitization of management practices. Right, that's another one that we also need to consider. Okay, as part of the context that that we are facing in running the business. Okay, the internal sources may also trigger some other may also become some sources of risks, okay, like poor project definition, for instance, okay, the unreliable task estimate, and so on and so forth, okay. Right, managerial incompetence, another one, okay, so we need to keep monitoring our team members, okay, and provide them with support to ensure that they keep their competency, okay. Right, and risk could bring costs to the business, financial, legal, WHS, work health and safety, okay, brand equity, company reputation, so on and so forth, okay. And experts also suggest the risk identification tools or techniques, such as the brainstorming, for instance, okay. This is a technique that we can use as well, okay. The next one is checklist to list down the potential issues, okay. And we can also look at the assumption analysis when we do our planning, okay. In let's say we do our management plan, we need to put in the assumptions underpinning our plan, Okay, and we also need to keep testing it, to keep testing the assumptions. Okay, whether they are still accurate or not. Okay. This is another one in terms of risk management with risk identification technique, the fishbone diagram, for instance. Okay, so here or Ishikawa diagram or cause and effect diagram. Okay, so although it is written as cause and effect, but we start with understanding the effect or the outcome, the end results of the problem. Okay, then we step back to review the possible causes or the possible root causes. Okay, some people suggest we can use 6Ms: materials, methods, measurements, manpower, machines, mother nature, or environments. Okay, so review the causes based on the 6Ms. Okay, now this idea is quite good actually to understand the problems because management gurus also suggest that if we understand the problem, okay, clearly we can potentially solve part of the problem already, right? Because that helps us to understand the possible root causes of the problem. Okay, right. That's a bit of example. I'm not going to discuss this. And another tool or technique in terms of risk identification, we can use the flow charts. Okay, no, flow charts basically reflect use benefit from the different shapes, okay, to symbolize the actions. Okay, so based on the flow chart logic in risk identification, we can identify risk at any stage of the flow chart. Okay, right. I'm not going to discuss that further, but essentially we can also put them together into what we call as the risk register, where we specify the risk, okay, and the likelihood. We analyze the impact, risk level until we help outlining the action plan. Now remember, the key point in here is to specify the risks, okay, so we can outline specific actions. Okay. Right, guys, so that's basically the key points that I'd like to discuss tonight, and I'll see you in the next session.